You're listening to The Wall. This is News Talk 710 KURV. I'm Sergio Sanchez. Okay, so we're done trying to fix the world's problems, the border security problems. We're done with that now. We're going to talk about local stuff. Got Fred Cruz in the studio right now helping me set up our guests. Mike's back. Mike Farias and Robert Pena. They represent Edinburg schools. So we're going to talk local now. And yes, we invite your calls. If you have any questions, 800-580-8255, 800-580-8255. You need to talk to Freddie, though, because Freddie's the one, he's the filter, he's the radio TSA. And yes, like always, he's got a little blue shirt and a little badge. I tell him he doesn't need to wear the uniform, but he likes it. He likes the uniform, likes his little blue gloves, and he's going to pat you down. You're going to like the pat down. 800-580-8255. We're talking about funding education in South Texas, Edinburgh style. There's a bond issue that's on the ballot. I apologize for taking a while to get on the radio here. We had Mr. Gus from CNN stop by to get a quick comment on the whole border thing. So maybe he'll pop up on CNN later on in the day. In Edinburgh, voters in Edinburgh, you pay taxes, Edinburgh schools? Leadership in Edinburgh School District, they're asking that you approve a bond measure to fund several projects there. Now, let me lay the ground rules real simple, guys. Robert Pena, Bobby, you're still the president of the school board, right?
Yes,
all
correct.
right. Robert Pena, president of the school board, he's in favor of the bond. And Mike Farias, we had him last week on the wall. Mike is one of the trustees on the board, and he says, nope, you should not vote for it, and he has some reasons why. Okay, guys, so let me get my timer here. Here's how we're going to do this. You guys good with the 90-second thing? The 90-second per, right? That seems more than enough.
Sure, sure, yep.
You guys run out of steam and have nothing else to say? I can't bank it, dudes. It's hard for me to carry the one and all that. See, you got the full 90 seconds up. You guys want to keep talking, that's fine, and then I'll cut you off. Please be respectful. Try to close your thought as quickly as possible. 2-3 seconds, or just clam it. Just shut up, and we'll go on. All right. Since this is the first time here for you, Bobby, okay. Do you have? I'm gonna give you the opening. Okay, since Mike already had plenty of time with us last week.
Okay.
So. Please explain the bond issue for Edinburgh voters, the school district voters. How much is it, and what is it for? Look at it real quick and explain to voters. And this will be a little bit open. I'm not going to limit you to 90 seconds. You just explain what is on the ballot for voters in Edinburgh. So, Robert Pena, president of Edinburgh Schools. Go ahead, brother.
Well, thank you, Sergio, and we appreciate being with everyone this morning, and certainly the opportunity to discuss our Edinburgh School District and I guess to kind of give a brief history, first and foremost, approximately 5 years ago, our district began a strategic plan for progress, as it was called, to envision how we were going to proceed our growth going forward, not only in the classroom, but also with facilities, also with teachers. Also, it included a platform of several items that would be encompassed in all the strategic plan for our district. As we continue to move forward with that, in about the last year and a half or so, almost 2 years, I think it's now, because time does go fast. We did begin to discuss a potential bond issue for our district as we began to see how the student population was being dispersed through our district, and how class sizes were growing or above state recommended levels, and also the need for additional facilities. One of the items within our bond issue are the CTE, the Career and Technology Education Facilities, and that the fact that the program and where it's located is pretty antiquated. So obviously CTE was one of our considerations. But overall, as we began to work on this bond issue, we had initially identified approximately $275 million in facility needs that included an elementary school, high school, middle school, CTE facilities, expansion to some elementary wings, and other infrastructure improvements, and other facility needs, all totaling about $275.
So you identified 275, and in the end, the school board, you guys decided to. How big is the school bond that's being proposed for voters to approve?
So present day, we then work together to identify our true needs or our most immediate larger needs, and that wound up being approximately $220 million, which is $220,660,000 is what we are proposing today. That would include a new high school, a middle school, 2 career and technology centers, the renovations to some elementary gyms, which are approximately 17, and 2 additions to our 2 elementaries that are located in the northeast of Edinburgh that have probably some of the highest populations.
Okay, and we'll leave it there. It's a $220 million bond issue, and president of our school board in Edinburgh, Robert Pena, explained some of the projects that are on tap for that. Now, let me again start with you, and here's the 90-second clock. Could we have put to bond, borrowed money, a much smaller list of things to do without having to ask voters to raise taxes?
The financial consultant that advised our district indicated to us that we, first and foremost, we also looked at our financial history and our financial background. So in the past, we had done a bond in 1998 that included a high school, middle school, and 4 elementary schools. And then in 99, we did a bond that included another high school, 3 elementary schools, and renovations to 10 campuses. Those 2 bonds have since been paid off.
Okay.
And closed, and those were smaller bonds. And then in 2008, we did a $110 million bond that included 2 middle schools, performing arts centers, 4 elementary schools, renovations to the new Vela High School that is now in existence. And at that time, the voters had approved up to 7 cents, but we only used 5 cents in our abilities to construct and build everything we did. So going forward, and to answer to your question, the financial consultant advised us of how well we had done in previous bonds, what we had accomplished in terms of paying those off, and also where we were with the existing bond. And he advised us that we had the ability to do a bond level at 0 tax increase, but he also advised us on what level with a 1 cent tax increase, a 2 cent, a 3 cent, a 4 cent, and a 5 cent tax
We're at
increase.
90 seconds. So this one is how much of a tax increase?
So this existing bond was decided on the facility needs that I previously spoke about at 4 cents.
At 4 cents. Let's go over to Mike Farias. He opposes the bond measure and the to-do list as is. Again, the question for you, the smaller list, how could we have approached this and using a smaller list of improvement projects without raising tax? Let me make sure your microphone is on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, there you go. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, yes, I feel that we could have meet the needs of the district without the burden of taxing our constituents and our taxpayers based on the Templeton demographic study that was given to us on the presentation. And I'm basing that on the $55,000 study that the school district paid to go ahead and educate us on where we're at and where we're going, considering our situation right now. And the reason why I went ahead and made a motion to do $152 million and move it back to November instead of May, it has twofold. Number one, it was based on the study that was done with Templeton Demographics. And number two, it would allow our constituents the opportunity to participate in this process. Because currently we do not have a bond committee made up of our constituents. We initially had an opportunity to do that on December 19th. All the board members selected 2 individuals to be on that committee. So we went ahead and selected 2 individuals. But what's interesting was the criteria that was chosen on what you had to have or be or meet to be on this bond committee. And I had a real problem with one of them, which was to have a bachelor's degree.
An
Last time
individual to be on
the bond committee had to have a bachelor's degree. And not everybody that pays taxes has a bachelor's degree.
we're at
As a
90
matter of
seconds.
fact, I really believe that the majority and above and beyond
All right.
don't.
All right. We're at 90 seconds plus there.
Thank you.
All right, Bobby, let's go back to Robert Pena, president of the school board, in favor of the bond issue in Edinburg. Let's touch on that. I was going to go back to the folks who recommended, the bond as is, tax increase. You guys did a good financial history, all that. Fine. Well, we can revisit that in a second. Let's look at the committee, the public involvement in making a decision on the to-do list, the priorities list. Let's go back there. Why don't we have a committee for this?
Beginning with our strategic plan involved a committee of many individuals within our community, whether it was health
The one that you mentioned at the beginning, like 4
Yes,
years
sir.
ago.
Our strategic plan did involve many members of our committee, from police and fire to health services to attorneys and doctors, and also retired citizens, regular citizens of Edinburg, university folks. I mean, we probably had 50, 60 people involved in our meetings, along with our administrative officials that were involved in our strategic plan. Going forward, I believe that we had discussed, if I recall, establishing a committee, and quite frankly, we did ask for the 2 committee members from each board member. And I'll be firm to say that the reason for me having pulled it off the agenda is because when I looked at whom 4 board members had submitted as their names, and I discussed this with Mr. Farias. I asked him, "Do you know who these folks are?" And I specifically laid out who they were. Whether they were university people, retired folks, they were individuals in the community, and the list that we had been given by the other 3 individuals were all from their political party faction. And that's what I didn't want to see. I didn't want to see the politics coming into this.
Okay, well, it's all about politics in the end. Wasn't that the right of every single trustee to put 2 people as they saw fit?
Nevertheless, we also had a difference of opinion in the fact that I believe Mr. Farias mentioned that he wanted to see this committee handle how the monies were going to be spent. And that's not the function of the committee. The function of the committee was going to be to take the message forward on the factual information of the bond, which is what we're trying to do.
Let me pay some bills, gentlemen. And Mike can come back and follow up on that. Well, our conversation today in studio here at the Wall at 710 KURV, Robert Pena, president of the school board, Edinburgh, and Mike Farias, one of our trustees in Edinburgh. Bobby's in favor of the school bond, $220 million on the ballot for Edinburgh voters. Mr. Farias, our trustee, no, he says we can do improvements. I'm just giving you the gist of it from my perspective. Mr. Farias saying we can do the improvements. It's just not that big. We don't need a tax increase. We need to punt the issue to November. And like he said last second, just a minute ago, he said we need a committee to make a decision on the priority list. You're listening to The Wall, focusing on a very specific Rio Grande Valley local issue, Edinburgh schools. Leadership at Edinburgh, by a slight majority, our school board, decided to put on the ballot a bond measure of $220 million, asking voters in Edinburgh to say yes to this debt that will provide for a high school, middle school, 2 career technology centers, some renovations to gymnasiums, some projects in the school district. One of our trustees, Robert Pena, the president of the school board, is in the studio advocating for you to vote yes for this. Mike Farias, one of our trustees, says no, you shouldn't. In fact, you should say no to the bond, and we need to revisit this issue from Mr. Farias' perspective. We need to revisit this in November with a new list and a committee of local folks, whether they have a college degree or not, should sit on a committee. Every board member should have, every trustee should have a chance to put 2 people in this committee to develop this spending list, and that's where we left it. And now it's your turn, Mike, to talk for 90 seconds. Tell us a bit more from your perspective on that issue.
Sure. Thank you, Sergio. I have a real issue with the fact of I have a lot of likes and dislikes, but I don't stop the system or pull items from any agenda when it comes to those. I like the process to go forward and let's have a discussion. Let's talk about it. The issue with having a college degree to be part of the bond committee is ridiculous. I would say, and I'll say it again, more than 50% of the individuals out there that pay taxes do not have college degrees. And the sad thing about it is that I don't like to silence an individual based on discriminating on their education. Quite frankly, that's discrimination as far as saying, you know what, you don't have a college degree, you're not good enough to be on this bond committee. I got a major issue with that. I'm sure when Mr. Pena and myself were out soliciting votes and asking people to vote for us, we weren't asking them whether they had college degrees, okay? Because if we did, and that was a qualification, we wouldn't be here. Because the majority of the people out there that go out and vote do not have college degrees. And that isn't a fault of theirs. Some of them is things that they did, but they were the pioneers that built us to be where we're at right now. So I got a real issue with that. And I know that my 90 minutes is up, and I just wanted to end with that. I want equal representation all the way around.
Give you a chance to follow up. Robert Pena, president of School Board Edinburg. Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, first and foremost, I don't believe it's silencing anybody to speak up. The items that Mr. Farias is mentioning right now is the first I hear of it. As school board president, I think he could have picked up the phone and called me and told me his opinion or expressed it to the board at any time. But besides that, Mr. Farias does say that he wants the process to go forward. Then let's go forward with it in May. May is a prescribed election date set forward by the state. In fact, Mr. Farias invited Secretary of State to be here last week, and he was proposing students to come out and vote. If you're eligible to vote, get registered to vote, exercise your right, which is a great thing. And so Secretary of State agrees that May 4th is a big election day. Or as he said, may the 4th be with you. So, if he wants to talk about it, then let's talk about it and go forward, Mike, because, he's still hung up on $152 million at zero tax increase, but none of us have still yet to hear how it's going to meet all the needs, as he stated earlier, because this particular list that I have here on the studies and cost estimates that we conducted still total up to $220 million. So, I'd still like to hear how that still fulfills all the needs of the district, because the details have yet to be shared with us. We had plenty of meetings and opportunities to talk about that when those numbers were presented. And again, I don't believe Mr. Farias failed to express his studies or cost breakdowns or how that was going to be conducted.
We're at 90 seconds. Mike Farias, one of our trustees for Edinburg. You want to follow up on that or go somewhere else?
Yeah, no, sure. I'd love to follow up on that. First of all, let's start off with the middle school. According to Templeton's demographics, our population, our middle schools is 7,322. Our current occupancy is 7,284. We're off by about 30 kids there. Next year, we're projected to be under capacity. And the 10-year projection is we're going to be 900 kids under capacity at our current capacity in our middle schools. So that's $45 million that we don't need to spend on a middle school according to the capacity that these schools were built for. The other thing is the CTE. There's two CTE buildings being proposed, one for $25 million and one for $26 million.
Career and technology.
Career and technology.
Let me pause. Yes. I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought. Templeton demographics. Both of you guys have that study in front of you, right? Is that information you guys
I have that information.
Okay,
here.
Bobby, when you told me that folks who advised you as school board president, the guys of the board, was it Templeton demographics who said, hey, you guys have a good history of paying off your debt and you can pay off debt? Was that them or somebody else?
Our financial advisor is Trustee.
It wasn't Templeton. So we're now listing, Mike Farias, our trustee, is listing Templeton demographics, the same numbers he brought last week, talking about at the moment how Templeton demographics was showing a potential decrease in the population size of the Edinburg census as far as schools, little butts, little tushes in the states. Okay, continue your thought, Mike. Sorry.
Yes, and then so we'll be under capacity, and yet they're proposing to spend $45 million on a middle school. Now, going back to the career technology schools, there's two of them. I believe that we can handle everything in one career technology school. And not only that, but the amount that they're proposing that it's going to cost is a lot of money compared to what was just built 5 years ago in Sherryland. I mean, you got a school with over 40,000 more square feet that was built at $55 million only 5 years ago. So Yes, we can go ahead and meet the needs of our district concerning this with 152 by taking out two of those items. One is the middle school, and the other one is the other CTE, which equates to 70 plus.
All right, we're at 90 seconds plus with you, Mike. My guest in studio here at the Wall. It's a special focus on a local issue. My apologies to the family in Brownsville, Harlingen, West Local, everybody else you guys want to hear about saving the world and putting ideas out there for border security. You know what? No one's listening to us, man. The cavalry ain't coming, like I told you last hour. And I'm glad we're able to focus on something local, something that's pocketbook related, at least for our family in Edinburg. Edinburg Consolidated Independent School District. Voters on May 4th, Saturday, May 4th, and early voting going to start here pretty soon. When's early voting started, Bobby? When is that starting?
April 22nd.
April 22nd, early voting. Edinburg voters, like many of us across the Rio Grande Valley, McAllen, Harlingen, everybody, at some time or the other, we get bond issues that pop up, and sometimes these issues don't get much airplay. Now, we got both for and against this bond issue in Edinburg. Robert Pena, president of the school board, in studio. Mike Farias, one of our trustees, who's against the bond, as is, also in studio. You're listening to The Wall, News Talk 710 KURV. We will continue our conversation and try to get as much information out there for you as well. You know, trying to sex it up a little bit, man. I'm sure at this very moment, dude, we got cars driving off the freeway at 70 miles per hour. Oh, school bond. Falling asleep at the wheel.
All of a sudden, Pena and Farias get into a physical fight. Oh,
See,
man, they all turn in, right? They all get in.
This is The Wall. News Talk 710 KURV. I'm Sergio Sanchez. I'm joking around with these two guys. Robert Pena, president of school board, Edinburg. Mike Farias, one of our trustees. For and against school bond that's on the ballot May 4th in Edinburg. And we had Zach. He was over here taking a picture of these two guys, waving hi. They're in the studio, so we posted on Instagram, whatever. The boys are going to post it on social media that, we're doing this conversation on the radio. And then I jokingly told the two guys, okay, next still shot, you guys kind of put your hands on each other's necks and pretend you're choking each other, like an action shot, Got to sex it up, man. Let's sell it somehow. All right, so let's talk about serious matters now. If you're just joining us on KURV, we're talking about school funding, financing in Edinburg. Yes, I know it's pigeonhole. I know it's one. But hey, Edinburg, we're big stuff, man. We got the county courthouse. We got the university. We got the medical school. One of the fastest growing cities in the Rio Grande Valley. If I could just get off the freeway real quick, Bobby, and I know this because you used to work economic development issues in the area.
Yes, sir.
Where do we rank in Edinburg as far as size? Are we number 4, number 3 in size? 70, 90,000 people, something like that? What are we?
In size
population
compared to
size,
whom?
Edinburg, compared to everybody. Brownsville, number 1. McAllen, number 2. Harlingen used to be number 3. It's not anymore.
The last I recall, our MSA, which is the Edinburg-McAllen MSA, was still the third fastest, largest
I was
growing
looking at
area.
cities. We're going to get those numbers here pretty soon. I apologize for distracting us.
I got some interesting numbers on growth for you, too.
And that's precisely what we're going to talk about right now, since the conversation is moving this way. Okay, folks, let me lay the groundwork one more time. And these two gentlemen are in studio. We're talking about for and against a $220 million bond issue for Edinburg schools. High school, middle school, two career and technology education buildings, renovations here and there, $220 million. That represents a potential 4 cent per 100,000 valuation increase for taxpayers in Edinburg. Now, the conversation has gone from mentioning what's on the plates, for and against, a committee that does not exist for as far as creating the to-do list, the punch list, the shopping list. There was not a committee of local citizens. There was an effort at one time to put each trustee was going to designate 2 people for this committee to, I guess, create the shopping list. That didn't come about, and now we have the issue on the ballot. May 4th is election day, early voting taking place in just a few days. Now, in the last segment, Mike Farias, who opposes the bond issue, as is Mike, is saying voters should say no and punt this to November and work on a different shopping list that was produced by a committee. Now, back to you, Bobby. Robert Pena, president of the school board in Edinburg. Mike cited that study that you guys were looking at the school board from Templeton Demographics that said the forecast is for shrinkage as far as the tushes in the seats. The population size of the school district is going to shrink over the next 10 years because, parents are pulling their kids and going to IDEA charter schools and other charter schools and all that, which is amazing to think because the valley seems to be bursting at the seams with population growth, just the way we are. But the forecast from Templeton is to shrink. Then, for anyone that would be asking, if the forecast is a shrinkage, a smaller population census for the school district, why would you want to take on more debt? So I'll leave it there, Bobby.
Well, thank you, Sergio. I think first and foremost, going back to the Templeton demographic study that Mr. Farias referenced, I'm sorry, let me back up to one quick statement. In closing on with regard to the committee, I'd like to state that, it's not our duty as elected officials to delegate the financial expenditures of a district to any subcommittee or any type of committee. That's not the part that the district is allowed to do under law. So that fiduciary responsibility has to remain within the district, the administrators, and the school board. Secondly, with regards to the demographic study, we'll go to some of the population growth figures and things like that. But, Mr. Farias talked about the demographic study stating that the middle schools were going to have about 3,000, 4,000 students. Actually, I didn't see that in the Templeton study. But what I can tell you is here, and I'll show it to you, and I'll be more than glad to share it with you, Sergio, is we get a report every board meeting of what our student population is, specifically on a breakdown by campus basis. Last report, we had 34,122 students. We have 6 middle schools. Total count that I have here is 7,800 students, okay? Now, if TEA prescribes that the middle school population should be around 900, we have one middle school with 1,341, one middle school with 1,055, another with 1,400, another with 978, one with 1,200, and one with 1,358. That means we are close to 2,000. Exactly what I have in count here is 1,965 students over in our middle school population.
Let's stay there.
From the TEA prescribed 900 students per campus.
I'll throw it back to you for 90 seconds. If you could and I'm familiar with this because I saw those numbers last week because Mike was in the studio, and you are explaining to our listeners in Edinburg, or taxpayers in Edinburg, that we are over capacity at the schools by several hundred students at each of the campuses. Although going back to the Temple demographic numbers, which were compiled by TEA, right? These are forecast by TEA, or is this Templeton taking a guess?
They took various
based on the shrinkage, because they also see that by the thousands every year, you guys are losing kids to IDEA. They're going off to
We're
charter
not
schools.
losing them by the thousands. They took a snapshot picture of the whole county and where those students are coming and going from different.
Well, Edinburgh's
districts.
not losing by the thousands.
No.
Okay.
What I can share with you is the study specifically stated that there are 38 campuses, not only IDEA, but other type. What are they called, Mike? I forget them.
And Mike, if you can bring those numbers up from TA, because one thing that I saw, Bobby, was a list of different schools because of open enrollment,
correct,
where the Edinburgh kids are going to, and I saw McAllen a few hundred here. Hidalgo, like 2 dozen here, and all the different school districts, open enrollment, right? They're going to different. And then I saw the IDEA number. It's like 2,000 for 1 year. I thought that was amazing. That's just Edinburgh. Did you see those numbers?
That was not just Edinburgh. That's a regional number.
Okay.
That was a regional number.
All right.
Because the Templeton study also stipulates that just 5 years ago, we had a little over, right around 3,100 students. Now we have 31,000 students. Now we have 34,000 students. Okay. So if we were losing students by the 1,000, why did we increase by 3,000?
All right. Now, if that's a regional number, and the numbers are impressive at how they're moving, because of open enrollment, they're moving to IDEA. But the forecast that I do remember from Templeton, though, is that the line is going down. And if that's the case, then 10 years from now, it's like you just got to wait it out, and it looks like your facilities might be balancing out, and accommodating the smaller population that they forecast.
Yes, and I totally understand your statement. But again, the Templeton study talked about, as a region, there were 20,000 students that have enrolled in these academies. Not just IDEA, but 20,000 students in Hidalgo County that enrolled in the 38 academies that they noted. So the way I see that as a school board member is we need to innovate, adapt, or we're going to die. Students will continue going to those other academies.
Do you still need
if we
the
don't
square
innovate
footage,
and
though?
adapt?
If the forecast for Edinburgh to have a smaller population,
I believe we do,
you still
because
need
I
the
can
square
also
footage?
show you the numbers where I just showed you where we're overcrowded by 2,000 students in our middle school, and we're overcrowded by another 1,600 in our high schools, and I can share those numbers with you too.
Was Templeton wrong to say that perhaps those same schools will be able to, if they just wait it out, they will be able to survive the
I'm not saying that
overextension?
I'm not saying that Templeton is wrong. I'm saying what Templeton did was give us different snapshots of growth in areas within our area, so that we could then deduce or assess what would happen within our district. Because what they also showed us, and let me see where I have that, but they also showed us that we are having close to 2,000 lots that have been permitted by the city of Edinburgh to be that are under construction or have been completed in Edinburgh, as well as the numerous number of building permits that have been issued by our city of Edinburgh. So when you see residential growth, when you see rooftops, you're going to see families, you're going to see kids.
Robert Pena, president of the school board in Edinburgh, he is in favor of a $220 million bond that's on the ballot May 4th for Edinburgh voters. Our trustee, Mike Farias, is with a group of trustees that say, no, you should say no to this bond and wait till November, and we need to create a new shopping list that will not increase taxes. I gave Bobby like over 3 minutes, man. We just kept talking about this, so I'll just open up the microphone, Mike,
sure,
if you want to follow up and talk about some of the demographic changes and all the things that we were mentioning.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Mr. Pena made a quote of 34,100 plus students is our current enrollment, about that. Yet the presentation that's being given to the district, as you can see here, is that states our enrollment is 34,500. That's disingenuous, because that isn't the true population. And that's where I have a main problem with it, that we're not being truthful. We're not being transparent. The other thing is that the total enrollment in 13-14, according to Templeton demographics, and that's the total enrollment for the state of Texas. Every year it changes. But the enrollment back then in the state of Texas was 80,140. And now in 17-18, it dropped to 40,555. You're talking a 50% decrease in enrollment. Now, out of that 40,555,
enrollment into public schools,
enrollment into
statewide.
all the schools in the state of Texas.
Okay. Back in 2013, 2014 was 80K.
80K, and 17-18 is 40, according to the Templeton demographics.
Less people moving to Texas, or in that
You know what?
time
They went
period,
ahead and
or-
explained the birth rates going down. They explained a lot of different issues having to do with those numbers. But those are the facts. They got that information, and those are the facts that we're going by. But out of those 40,555, over 50% of those are not in public schools. They're in charter schools.
Their charter schools are public schools, if I can
Well,
say
what
that.
I mean
Right.
is
traditional
traditional public schools,
traditional
yes.
ISDs.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So not only are the enrollments decreasing, but over 50% of those are not going to the ISDs.
You're trying to point to a trend. Again,
Yes, a trend.
reinforce
And
the
that trend is going to keep on getting smaller and smaller in the enrollment, according to their things. And then also, this was a study that was done by Templeton Demographics, and this was done in fall of 2014.
Okay.
Okay? Now, I want you to look at this. This is now. Check this out.
Okay. What are the numbers that stand out? Of course, people can't see this. What are the numbers that stand out to you?
Well,
try to
look
paint a
at the
picture for
arrows.
them.
They all changed. In 14, it was totally different. The sales was up 5.1 year-to-date sales. Here,
You're referring
now,
to the McAllen housing market
Yes.
year-over-year comparison, year-to-date sales down
Exactly.
3.9%. What period to what period, Mike, are you referring to?
I believe this section is up to the 14-15, because that's what this study is from.
Okay.
And this is 17-18. But what I see here is not only the year-to-date sale is lower, but also the average price is 11% higher.
You're pointing to the valuation of the housing market because
Yes.
that's the base of taxation for the
Yes.
school district.
And then also, if you look at the number of listings, back in 14-15, it was 4.4 negative in listings, but the listings now, as October, are up 8.4.
Okay, you're going to have to cut to the chase, but
Sure.
because we're running.
What
out
I'm
of time.
saying is we're getting
what's the point?
smaller.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we're getting smaller, and I don't want to commit a tax burden to our constituents when we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. And that's why I'm being very vocal. Let's look at it in November. Let's take another look at it and see what our true needs are.
Now, I heard the argument that we are getting smaller as a population census within the school district, and the forecast would be to smaller. You were pointing to the housing market. Are you saying that the market cannot, or the market is weaker as far as the housing market in Edinburgh, and is forecast to be weaker as well, and it's not fair to put the tax burden on them? Is that
Well,
what
yes.
you're saying?
I mean, back in 14-15, the existing home inventory was 7.7 negative. Now we have a surplus of 12.1%. In other words, the sales aren't happening the way they're going.
Okay, I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Inventory.
The growth is eventually slowing down.
Let's go back to Robert Pena, school board president. What do you say to the evolution of the housing market that does not favor the argument for a tax increase?
Well, first and foremost, Mr. Farias stated that he was showing on a presentation of approximately students of 34.5, and I had stated approximate students of 34.1. I think what Mr. Farias needs to remember is that we also have a large student migrant population. If I recall, it was over 1,000 students last, and those students do come and go invariably to our district, so those numbers do fluctuate on a monthly basis. But if Mr. Farias wants to claim that we're not being transparent over 300 and something students, then you know what? I think he obviously agrees with me that we're at 34,000 then. But nonetheless, Templeton demographic study still told us that we were out of 20 school districts in Region 1, that Edinburgh ISD had been the second fastest growing school district in Region 1, and that region covers from Laredo down to Brownsville, 20 school districts, okay? Furthermore, that study also told us that Hargill, Avila, and Monte Cristo elementary school zones are going to experience the fastest growth area because that's where the most subdivisions and the most lots are being developed.
North Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Furthermore, Mr. Farias sits now on the Economic Development Board of the City of Edinburgh, and as an EDC board member, I think he would agree with Mayor Molina's recent comment that Edinburgh issued the most residential permits than any city in Hidalgo County recently. That was, I believe, just last year. So I think it goes to show that us being the largest school district in terms of size, in terms of square miles within our community, that we are still going to continue to grow. We may be growing at a decreasing rate. And, as an economics major, I went to Texas Tech, graduated with an economics degree, and there is an economics term such as increasing at a decreasing rate. And I wouldn't say that we are completely decreasing if we're still able to permit lots and sell homes within our area. Tres Lagos took off just a while back. Tres Lagos being the big.
You do not agree with the Templeton demographic numbers then, as far as the extra inventory forecast for lower.
No, I'm saying there is inventory, but I'm also saying because there is inventory, that we're going to experience additional growth because more rooftops equal to more families and more students.
All right. I gave you an extra minute on that one to try to finish your thought. Let me pay some bills.
Thank you.
Freddie, clear the inventory. Let's get us out of here. That way I can give Mike the proper amount of time and Bobby as well and close out this. We're talking with two leaders from Edinburgh Schools, president of the trustees, the board, Robert Pena in studio. Mike Farias, one of our trustees. Robert is in favor of a school bond. Voters, you need to decide this in Edinburgh. $220 million for various projects. 4-cent increase valuation on your property. Mike Farias is opposed to it, says we do need some improvements in schools, all that. Wants a smaller list that does not increase taxes and asking that voters say no and punt this to November. That's it for the questions. Freddie, thank you for putting this through the siphon. We'll see if we can get at least one of these topics here on the floor. You're listening to The Wall, News Talk 710 KURV. So I need to go to Mike Farias, one of our trustees from Edinburgh, and Mike Farias, trustee, Robert Pena, president, Edinburgh Schools. In the studio, we're talking about the $220 million bond issue. that is on the ballot May 4th in Edinburg. Mike, I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes to follow up on what Bobby was saying. Like, you just
Okay.
kind of clear your thoughts, and then so we can close out with some of the projections and forecasts for the area.
Yeah, I want to go to what Mr. Pena referenced to as far as the summary. He said it's referenced in Templeton demographics that Edinburg CISD is the second fastest growing district in Region 1. But if you keep on reading and going to the final, it does say that fall 2023 projected enrollment is going to be 32,395 kids. And then fall 2028 projected enrollment is going to be 31,091 students. If you read the thorough summary at the very end, it shows you that there's going to be a 10% decrease according to the Templeton demographics. So I don't want to go ahead and just pick out certain things here that sound good, that are good for the argument. Let's look at the whole thing as a whole and let the individuals know the truth about it. The other thing is that, yes, there is a lot of growth going on, but we're not the only game in town. And I do agree with Mr. Pena in the sense that we need to go ahead and competition's good. So let's go ahead and see what we can do better so we can compete with these charter schools. I have no problem with that. I've always been a big advocate.
Open enrollment, if I could sidebar as well.
I'm sorry?
And open enrollment too, right?
Yes. Well, actually, back in July, our superintendent went ahead and we voted to go and have an open enrollment. And the reason why we had open enrollment was because of our numbers decreasing. So how is it that all of a sudden, only 8 months ago, we have open enrollment because of our numbers decreasing, but yet we want to go out and spend $220 million with a tax burden for more schools if our numbers were decreasing only 8 months ago and we had to open up open enrollment? Not only that, but our own attorney in the Monitor, and I quote, is that since enrollment is tied to state funding, decreased enrollment affects the funds the district has to support its situation and programs. And he also goes to say, and I quote, recruiting new students and coming up with ways to increase enrollment are major reasons for the contract. And that's a contract that was in discussion with ABC. O'Hanlon said, because the district is in a struggle, if you will, with charter and other entities. So one thing they're saying that we're in a struggle, we have to do open enrollment, we're losing kids, but on the other hand, they're saying 220 million.
All right, let me do a quick math. I stink at math. That's why I wound up in radio. Okay, let me look at the clock real quick. Okay, gentlemen, we got roughly 3 minutes left. I'm going to give you 90 seconds each, brother. Just final thoughts, maybe come back. And Bobby, go ahead. Robert Pena, President School Board, in favor of the bond. Go ahead, Bobby.
And in terms of the district opening enrollment, we're not opening enrollment because we're decreasing. If anything, we maybe have decreased by about 200 students, if I recall correctly, in the last report that was given to us by the superintendent. We opened enrollment to remain competitive. As I mentioned earlier, there are 38 academies out there that have 20,000 students that could otherwise have been in any public school district in Edinburg, or not a charter school. The other way to look at this, I believe, is also that in remaining competitive, we need to continue to send a message to our teachers that we want a good learning environment for you. Our teachers right now, we have a large number of teachers that are roving teachers. That means they don't have a classroom. That means they don't have a permanent classroom. They have to pick up all their stuff after teaching one class and move to the next. That's not a good learning environment for them to be able to sit down and consult students. What message are we sending to our parents? That we're okay with them having 36 students per classroom? We are overcrowded. We are trying to address our overcrowded need. And lastly, we've also learned that when a student enrolls at an academy and leaves Edinburgh, they come back to us. Every student has a state ID number appointed to them. And by that number, when the student leaves us, we know exactly where they went, and they come back to us at the junior high, and they leave us at the elementary level, come back at the middle school and high school level, because then they can participate in UIL activities. And that's the trend that we are truly seeing.
Robert, thanks for stopping by. Robert Pena, President School Board, Edinburgh. Okay, Mike, you got the last 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and address Mr. Pena's stating that the reason why we have open enrollment wasn't because of decrease of numbers. I'd like to quote our superintendent. Came out on the Monitor July 31st, 2018, and I quote, district enrollment is what led the district to propose, district enrollment is what led the district to propose open enrollment. This decrease has been steady, Gutierrez said, over the last 3 to 5 years. So which one is it? I mean, I'm quoting our superintendent only 8 months ago talking about that, but yet Mr. Pena says there is no decrease going on. The truth is there is a decrease going on. The truth is this is being rushed to May. The truth is we don't need $220 million with a tax increase to meet the needs of our district. And
Gentlemen,
that's my final word. Thank you.
Thank you for stopping by. Freddie, I got it here. Thank you. Robert Pena, Mike Farias for stopping by here at KURV.